And I'd like to invite you all to stay for this conversation because it's going to be a little bit different than all the plenaries that we had, and not just different because I have a talking stick. And first off, I want to thank you, Tessa, thank you, Juan, thank you, Father Amo and Aka. And I'm beginning with a thank you now because you've joined us on stage, not entirely knowing what we have planned for you. Because you see, this plenary will be conducted in the spirit of a generative dialogue. This means that as we seek to answer the question, whose rights, and how do we integrate the knowledge of marginalized groups, we acknowledge that there may be very different answers, and that all of these different answers that come up today may all be right. So as we enter into this dialogue, I want to ask you all to share your experiences honestly, to listen to each other without judgment, and to speak simply and clearly so that your message is conveyed to all. All of this is an effort to really deepen our thinking on the theme, and that the dialogue will emerge new thinking. To begin this dialogue, I would like to invite you to introduce yourself to each other. What is your name and why are you here? So perhaps, Tessa, you could start us off.
Sure. Thank you so much, Selena, for the invitation to participate in this conversation. My name's Tessa Khan. I am a human rights lawyer, now working on climate change. I helped establish a project called the Climate Litigation Network, which seeks to hold northern governments in particular responsible for their contribution to the climate crisis. And that project was established within the Agenda Foundation. And Agenda is a Dutch organisation that is responsible for the first lawsuit in the world in which a government was ordered by a court to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions for the harm that causes and the contribution that has in terms of climate change. And I am here because I think I am one of the few but growing number of people who have come to the environmental movement and the climate movement from a human rights background, very much with the importance of respecting the rights of people who are most affected by environmental crises in mind when we talk about solutions to environmental problems.
Hintiach, I am Shuar, indigenous from the rainforest of Ecuador. In this moment, I will speak on behalf of COICA organization, what is a main big umbrella organization in the entire Amazon basin. We are working in the 9 countries. We are trying to present the voices, the struggle, what's going on the ground. 100 million people living there, day by day. They have under a lot of pressure, a lot of criminalization, persecutions, etc. So the idea is now to try to reflect that how we are making our points from the assembly, how we are building our plans of life on the ground. So this is a real channel for us, and then also I am here with my new president of COICA, Mr. Gregorio Diaz Mirabal, who recently was elected as a president of COICA 6 months ago. So now we have the challenge to bring to this arena to try to communicate these voices, feelings, struggles, and our petitions and demands from the ground, from the deep rainforest, the last part of the life that is still we are maintaining, we are monitoring, and we are preserving this.
Okay, I am Father Anselmus Amo from Missionary of Sacred Heart. I am Director of Justice and Peace Commission in Archdiocese of Merauke, West Papua, and concerned also to indigenous people's rights. And I am here for solidarity with all indigenous peoples in the world. And thank you to Forest People Program who invites me come here. Yeah.
My name is Aga Niviana, and I'm 24 years old. I am a poet and a writer. And I'm here, first of all, to learn through these conversations, but also to create awareness about Greenland. And the reason why I started doing that around 5 years ago, when I lived in Copenhagen, in Denmark, was that I realized that there is a lot of information that the world doesn't know about Greenland. And I felt that there was a need to have these conversations, and I try through these conversations to create a platform where we can communicate on, on a deeper level. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. My name is Salina Abraha. I work with the Global Landscapes Forum. And I am not moderating this conversation. I am simply holding space for this dialogue to occur. And with that, I want to introduce you to this object. It is native to the park and alongside the river nearby us. And for this discussion, it is our talking stick, which means that its purpose is to allow each person to speak freely. It means that we're going to let this person speak without interruption. And when you have something to say, simply gesture to the talking stick. I'm going to have this as a symbol, because I think we can acknowledge our inherent wisdom and intelligence to respect each other, to honor each other, and to give each other equal time. So my role at this point is to pose 4 questions to you that you will then have a dialogue on. If it speaks to you, whatever comes up, just share that. And for those of you in the audience, when you hear the question, I invite you to also think of your own answer. So perhaps write it down so you have this to discuss in the future. The first question is, what or who do you feel responsible for?
I feel responsible for my community, especially the generation, the younger people, but also for the elders, because I acknowledge that they learned us a lot, and they fought a lot to secure the rights that we have today. And I feel that it's our responsibility to push even more so we get more rights, so the future generations will have better options in life. Yeah, that's what I feel responsible for.
I feel responsible also for my people, but also for the entire indigenous organization, what they did the effort to get together in unity and to build their own organization to have our voices, because if we think many, many years on the back, we were living free for many centuries in our original traditional lands. So the pressure or the contact with the other society make us to a challenge to get together and then to discuss between our own people and to put our own road to defend ourselves. The unity is the first main power and vision that we put on. Unity and work together is the only way how to protect ourselves. And then we create organizations like my own organizations, and like other brothers and organizations. So the main structure organization, but what I just want to reflect here is that when we create organizations in unity and respect each other, brothers and sisters with different visions, different cultures, different languages, but the same feeling for the Mother Earth, the same feeling for the biodiversity, ecosystems, for the forest, that you don't need to have a language. You just need to see the tree and the water, and you're speaking with the other brother and sister. We have our own ceremonies. We have our own traditional ways to connect with the mother and the forest. So bringing that, I feel responsible to bring that for my organization, for COICA organization, what is to bring together millions of the indigenous groups, even to feel people who don't have the chance to have contact with this life. They are living free, isolated people. They are not contacted with this reality. We have 60 people, more or less, in the rainforest inside. They don't want to be contacted with this society, and we need to respect that. And I don't know if I have to speak on behalf of them, but we need to do all for them. And then we have the Avia Yala platform. In Latin America, we have a platform that we have a dialogues, discussions, and solidarity with other indigenous groups in Central America, Mesoamerica, indigenous communities also, and then that's what I feel responsible so far. Never forget who I am, never forget where I am coming from, and what we are going to go forward for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I feel this as my responsibility. This is like calling for people, for indigenous people, to protect them or to be with them in their reality, yeah. Inequality, when they face companies or they face the police or military, yeah. They come and need help. Father, come and see our reality and please help me, help us. Yeah. So this like calling for me to be with them and to walk together with them. Yeah. Thank you.
I think this is a very personal question. I think that people answer in a way that is so tied up with their personal identity. And in my case, my family is from Bangladesh. Most of my family still lives in Bangladesh, but I grew up for the most part in rich Western countries. But because of that connection to South Asia and some of the poorest communities in the world, I was aware, from a very young age of the vast inequalities in the world that we live in and the injustice, really, of the way in which the opportunities that people have in no way reflect their capacities or their capabilities or their rights. So I've always felt a responsibility to address some of those inequalities, but at the same time, I'm no longer living in or in a physical sense connected to those communities. So I am very careful about how I exercise my responsibility. And I think my responsibility is primarily to use my current position and ability to access the institutions and actors in the North who have the power, where the power and the wealth is concentrated, and who are responsible for so many of those inequalities, to use that access to change them where they are, rather than to try to create an agenda or co-opt, I think, the work that's already being done to empower people in developing countries.
I think what I'm really hearing from all of us, and maybe for those in the audience, is we can often feel responsible for these parts that are very close to us. right? It's our communities, the cultures and the ways in which we've grown up in, and we want to see that be respected and honored in the world. But the second question I have is around our responsibility that goes beyond our initial circle and our countries and our heritage, but in communities that perhaps we are not in. So the second question is, how do we collaborate to advance rights when we are not from the communities that are directly impacted?
I think it's very important to the communities that we're talking about, that they get to tell their own stories, share their own knowledge, that we respect the way in which to do it. Yeah, like when you come as an outsider to a place and you try to help, and there's a tendency where we think that we know better than the ones living there. And also, in relation to that, I want to comment, like when we talk about, for example, indigenous knowledge, that how we should recognize it more. We have, an example is, we have a lot of scientists coming to Greenland every year, you know, come for a few months every year for maybe 20 years, and they call themselves experts in Greenland. But what about the people who are born in Greenland and they die in Greenland and they're surrounded by this nature and see all this change all the time? Why is it that they are not seen as much as experts as the others coming maybe for 20 years, a few months every year? So yeah, I think it's important to pass the mic to the communities that we want to help and talk about.
I think so. It's important to the solidarity outside of your own main territory or your own main area where you are working as indigenous people, as organization, to try to reflect to the other side, to understand and respect the way what are our demands, what are our petitions, but the collaboration doesn't mean that you need to do whatever you want. I mean, this is something that we need to prepare ourselves, because on the ground we have our own protocols, our own way, own proposals, initiatives that we develop ourselves in our own methods, with our ceremonies, our own discussions. So the collaboration from outside can be the financial support, yes, and we need to know what we are going to do in the cooperation. The scientific platform or dialogue, also how we approach as indigenous people with our traditional knowledge, and we need to combine. And we need to I know that we have an emergency, and we're trying to do and say everything, we talk everything to say there is a real emergency going on the ground. But sometimes it's not reflected. But there is a lot of studies that many researchers are doing, and there is a lot of publications that there's something wrong is happening, but also how we as indigenous people, we know that these are listening, and in what way is going to be the collaboration with that petitions. We know what is going on the ground, and that scientific language they are put in there in the text, but we need to do this challenge, how to share these two ways of the optics of view, to put together, because this world we are living, all of us, we have only one world. Everybody, we work together. We are going to try to save this planet in this moment. So there's a lot of challenge, but we need a lot of demands. We need a lot of help on the ground. It's unbelievable still today the kid is dying for simple gripe or simple, is dying in the middle of the forest because he don't have something healthcare or goes by airplane far away. Because that many of these diseases are not belongs to us. These diseases come from outside, for illegal mining or the people who are getting illegal to deforestate or forest, etc., etc. There are many issues. So we need to see as a transversal line, we have to talk about healthcare, what we call education. We have to give chance to the kids to get the technology. Why not? So maybe we don't have the chance, but we need to go forward in respect. Respect each other, and to listen to each other. And then this society needs to help a lot. But what way, how we are going to receive this help? And financials and researchers and everything. We are asking help and collaboration. So the idea is to develop a roundtable, discuss us, see each other, and feel it, and listen. That means that if I am thinking different, that now makes me your enemy. That means that we are different. We can build something more strong to have some solution. So that is something that we are asking for this kind of collaboration.
Okay, I think from this situation where inequality held in the indigenous people, this call for action and seeking a solution to overcome this inequality, or working together with other people and the victims in this equality and working together for get the equality in their rights. And the first of all, from indigenous, if they want to get the equality of their rights, okay, let's come, let's working together, and we can help them. Yeah, thank you.
I think this sort of picks up on the point that I was making previously, but I think if you are outside of a community that you are purporting to help, you need to be formally accountable to that community. There need to be real formal structures to establish your accountability to those groups and to ensure that there is real trust between you and them. I think in the absence of that, there's a real risk that you end up substituting your own agenda and your own priorities for the priorities of the communities you're allegedly helping. And I think within the climate movement, we often think that climate change is the single most important problem for every community in the world, and it should be the priority that eclipses all other emergencies or crises. But actually, as Juan Carlos was saying, of course, for most people, it's much more urgent that you have your right to health or your right to education or your right to livelihood protected, and climate change seems like a distant problem that can be left for another day to address. And I think we absolutely have to respect those priorities and the reality that people are actually facing in their daily lives.
I'm wondering, just hearing that, how do we learn to advance the climate agenda alongside these different issues? Does anyone here have experience with how can we not have it be such a siloed conversation?
I think you have to respect where climate change ultimately falls in terms of people's priorities. There are often clear connections between the infrastructure that contributes to climate change, like coal-fired power plants or coal mines or other dirty energy projects and the way that it affects people's health or pollutes local environments. If that's the case, then I think that's a good entry point for addressing climate change, but ultimately it's doing it in a way that respects the most immediate impact that that particular project or infrastructure is having on people's lives. I don't think you can make climate change a priority for people who just don't perceive it to be the most immediate threat. I think that that's not the right approach. Even if climate change is something that needs to be addressed now, then I think you have that conversation in communities and in countries where there is more of an understanding and an appreciation, and also where the problem is originating. And overwhelmingly, the problem of climate change originates in the global north, in countries that have the highest per capita carbon footprints, in the countries that are financing fossil fuel projects around the world. I don't think we need to make it a priority to necessarily engage Indigenous communities in the Amazon on the question of climate change. We need to clean up our act in northern countries, and that's where the conversation needs to happen. I think we absolutely need to include affected communities in understanding how climate change is degrading their natural environment or affecting their ability to farm or enjoy their livelihoods the way that they normally would. But the responsibility, in my view, clearly lies in rich countries and rich communities that have overwhelming historical and current responsibility for the problem. Mm.
This is a very important question, and I was thinking when we arrived and we get together as a caucus, we meet brothers and sisters around the world, and we begin to discuss preparatory to try to get engaged with the climate dialogue, etc. We do that in our own organizations, we do that on the ground, we prepare ourselves, and then we connect with other brothers from the highlands, we got brothers from the seas, on the islands, from Central America, and then we prepare ourselves and we respect ourselves and we trust the voice who is going to communicate or represent us, or who is going to speak in behalf of us for a million people. It's like, it's always a challenge. I was trying to remind yesterday when I have opportunity to speak. The first time when they were saying these acronyms about RED, maybe you know, but for us to try to put this dialogue under indigenous leaders on the ground, first is REDD, and they will say RED, when we were translating in Spanish, this RED is for fishing, RED is for play volleyball, RED is for this, RED is for that word. I mean, this creates a lot of confusion. I say, you don't have to go too fast, okay? Because this creates a challenge for us, and then we need to prepare ourselves to translate all these acronyms, translate all these words from outside, what my sister just explained, what's going on in the situation. So, but for ourselves, I say, wait a second, we need to say something here. We are not creating this. This problem is no, we are not doing this problem. We are living there for many, many years. We're living here, we stand here. But we have our own initiatives, how we are maintaining all this direct dialogue or living well-being with the rainforest. But the problem is that when we present these proposals, these initiatives, how we are managing our territories, sometimes outsiders, I mean the governments, they stole these ideas. And then say, and who has the credit about this? When I say who has the credit, I mean, maybe the government or maybe another institution, but no, the real Dinkins, the elders, or the people, Indians there, that we are great to protect them for many years. So the point here is that saying this, the initiative has to be respected. We need to transfer this because later you have the NDCs. Yesterday we were discussing about NDCs. NDCs, a new acronym, NDCs, okay. So okay, we as indigenous people, of course, we are doing our own indices, but we need to put our intercultural language indices to the government. Say, wait a minute, you need to see what we are doing, what we are contributing. It's a real challenge all the time. But this challenge doesn't mean that we are not capable or we are not prepared to present our proposal. Yes, we have proposals. We present on the table. That's why I am fanatic to create a roundtable discussions, respect, and put these documents there. To finalize this part is that it's very important to say for us, the elders, for us in the point of view for indigenous people, the elders is very well respected. This is a values man, a values woman and man. It's not just for other societies when you get old, you are not valuable. No, for us it's different. It's a huge, important value memories living with a lot of experience. This is something that we need to combine, to put in the documents. It's not just letters, acronyms, it's more humanity, the touch inside. So we need to transmit that. I mean, this is an emergency. I'm not going to repeat what my sister said. I completely agree, but we are there. Don't lose us. You need to listen to us. We have something to say. We have something to present, yes. And this is the challenge that we are doing in climate change, in human rights. Human rights is part of the central voice, the discussions. No rights, nothing goes forward. That's it. Rights in the center of the point, discussion.
No. My next question is still on the topic of rights, but it's not about rights of people. Question number 3 is, what does it really mean to recognize and protect the rights of nature?
I don't want to keep talking, I'm sorry, but I get emotional and sometimes I can't stop myself. That's my problem. It's indigenous problems. I was very happy many years ago when my country, I was part of these discussions, working with the legislators, working with some politics there, say we need to do something. And we create these rights, or the natural rights. The water has rights, the tree has rights, the stone has rights. And we communicate with this. When we walk in the rainforest, when we are in the rainforest, we not just see, we observe it. I mean, we see different. It's our elders, it's some relatives, kids. But we put in the Constitution the rights, the natural rights. And we have in the document. Wow, I said, this is going to change. And I was very happy myself, and my leaders, my elders, were very happy. We have the document, the Constitution, like as a person, you have your own collective rights. In my country, we have 21 collective rights there. And we are one for one, and we are checking every day. And then we have natural rights. What else you need to have? But they don't respect. They have other priorities, and this is something that we need to make a voice all together here, and we have to keep saying that that's not the way. And you have the priority for infrastructure, oil, mining, concessions, and that is the problem. This is something that we really need to discuss, and my leaders and my elders and myself, we will give our life to defend the rights, and defend the mother, the rights of the natural. But I don't know what's wrong. I mean, the system is something wrong. What else we need to push on the table? So, coming back to your point, is that I think so, that we need all together in this. It's not just speaking. I am fundamental that I have to present. We have one ILO, 169, and we have the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, or is valid or no, or is recognized or yes or no, but we have these documents. So we need to bring these documents, remind the governments all the time. But sometimes when we say we need to control the governments, but okay, maybe that's the way. But we need to keep walking and walking. Recognize the elders, the leaders who were designing and contributing with law, with human rights documents. This is great. We need to memorize that. Many of the leaders, they are not here. They pass away, they are arrested. But to remind us and honor them, we need to, the new generation, we need to keep following this. So we have rights. Many governments recognize 169, but some governments until today, 21st century, doesn't want to recognize. You need to help us, to remind them, to the cooperation, bilateral cooperation.
Thank you. The question, what does it really mean to recognize and protect the rights of nature? And if the dialogue has concluded, I would like to ask you all to give reflections in response to what you've heard. What new thinking has emerged? What will you take from this conversation? If you could each take a minute to close the dialogue.
I'd like to say something actually in response to the last question, which is just to say that I definitely see the value in creating new rights of nature in constitutions and legal instruments and treaties and so on. But as Juan Carlos was saying, we already have so many rights that are formally protected, but actually, in fact, completely ignored. And what we are at this point, I think, in desperate need of is real bottom-up accountability for the fact that governments and businesses feel so unconstrained by their legal obligations. They are happy to sign treaties, they are happy to pass laws or enshrine rights in constitutions. I think in Latin America you have some of the most progressive constitutions in the world. You know, you would really think, looking at those documents, that the communities that are the beneficiaries of those constitutions must be incredibly equal and thriving, and we know that that's not the case. And I think that's because fundamentally we have a huge imbalance in power at the moment in our communities. There is a systematic attempt by institutions and actors who stand to benefit from the exploitation of nature and the exploitation of resources to do what they can to actively suppress the voices of communities who are trying to claim those rights. I mean, I think, you know, it's important for us sometimes to not feel like it's up to us to continue to fight. We have to hold them responsible for everything that they're doing to undermine us and our rights. The responsibility is as much with them as it is with us to claim our rights.
Okay, I think we have some regulation for recognizing indigenous rights, yeah, and natural rights. But that's like only a document. Yeah. I think we need to recognize indigenous people as a human in reality and touch the human heart. Sometimes some statement said like that, they need the human resources but not need the people. And this is very difficult for us to struggle in this situation, but I think this is a calling for all to protect not only human resources, but the human, not only the natural resources, but the human, where they live in the forest and in the area of the land. Thank you.
I also think that we as human beings have to start seeing ourselves as a part of nature, like that we're not separated from this, this issue, this climate issue, that it's not the planet and us, that we are a part of all these dynamics, both that led to this problem, but also a part of the dynamics that's gonna come up with the solutions. And what am I trying to say with this? Yeah, that this connection, this connection we have to nature, that it's important to see ourselves as a part of it. And I think that that will help us, be a part of it. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. And at this point, I really want to thank our speakers for engaging in this dialogue. Can we have a round of applause for this conversation? I've been so very inspired by the passion and the knowledge and the experiences that were brought to the table. And I encourage you all, if you were writing down your answers to these questions, there's a great opportunity to continue this dialogue, if anyone wants the talking stick, to have it over lunch and to connect with each other in new ways and continue our thinking around rights in the landscape. Thank you so much for this plenary.